Seat taken?
Nobody's in the seat that I ain't taking, friend.
So this is, Sabacc?
Sabacc.
Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to Sabacc the Block, the official First Cut Star Wars show. Tonight, we are breaking down the best performances in Star Wars and taking a look back on the Book of Boba Fett. Joining me to do all that, we have Laura Kelly back in the house. What is up, Laura? You're on mute. You're muted.
I'm great. I'm muted. That's what I am. Thank you for asking. I was trying to be helpful and I made it worse.
No worries. Totally okay, Laura. Laura, we are so happy to have you back on Sabacc the Block. As we were saying beforehand, it has been a minute, but we definitely appreciate you taking a little bit of time to join us on this show. But before we get to anything else, guys, first things first, we want to honor the life and legacy of James Earl Jones, the actor, performer, and artist that passed away recently. And we want to pay our respects by saying a few words. James really elevated every project that he was in and transcended his own art. His incredible voice and his performance truly changed the world. He defined the power of an incredible voice performance and also delivered amazing performances in others of his films. His power and grace and presence is enough to extend through various generations. But it wasn't just James, the actor, it was James, the person, that really transformed the way we view the arts and the way we view these types of performances. So may his name live on forever. Shout out James Earl Jones. What an incredible, iconic presence and performer. Laura, I want to give you the opportunity to say a couple words about James Earl Jones and what he means to you.
I mean, what an incredible career this man had. 60 years he worked in television, film, and theater, and that is just so remarkable. He leaves behind an incredible legacy of work. I don't know about you, Ace, but like I didn't grow up with Star Wars necessarily. So my first time that I ever saw James Earl Jones in anything was The Sandlot. And it just kind of blew my mind because he played this character that came on screen kind of towards the end of the movie that was unseen through most of it. And he was kind of like projected as being what we thought would be this villain. And who would have thought that, you know, all those years later, I would learn like this man actually played the most iconic villain pretty much of all time. So yeah, it was really sad to learn that he recently died, but man, what a life well lived.
Yeah, RB3, I also want to give you the chance. I know James Earl Jones meant a lot to you as well.
Yeah, man, definitely. It was tough. You know what I mean? Just like you said, I grew up multiple generations of James Earl Jones performances. You're talking about, like you said, Laura, The Sandlot, of course, the Lion King, Mufasa is forever iconic. For me in my household, I remember my grandma showing me the 1974 film Claudine, which was a very, kind of real, authentic look at like Black life in the 1970s. And James Earl Jones was the co-lead, and his co-star who actually played the title character, Claudine, Diana Carroll, was nominated for the Oscar for that performance back in 1974. But he also brought it as well. He was also in the original rendition of A Raisin in the Sun, which is an iconic Black play and stage play that actually was the first major Broadway show that was written by a Black woman. So again, he had a lot of amazing parts. The Great White Hope, 1970, where he played Jack Jefferson, which is also an incredible story in and of itself about race relations in the early 1900s. But then that's all before Star Wars, right? And that's all before Star Wars. And he did amazing work before Star Wars, and he did amazing work after Star Wars with his voice. Coming to America, both 1 and 2. The fact that the second one literally has a funeral reception for his character is kind of hilarious. But now watching it is like, it's a little tough too. But man, it's all respect to James Earl Jones. Absolute legend.
Yeah, one of the few EGOT winners as well, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes,
he won an EGOT, so that's also absolutely massive. And for someone personally who's talked a lot about voice performances and the respect that they deserve, he definitely defined that. Obviously, he's an incredible actor in his own right when it comes to on-film stuff. But as a voice performer, the absolute power, presence, like iconic levels that you can reach just with your voice, and the fact that people started to put a lot more respect on it. Obviously, there's still a long way to go, but the fact that he did a lot of work, he ran a lot of miles for voice performers, and the fact that he was able to do that with his voice as Vader and obviously as Mufasa as well is definitely iconic. So shout out to James Earl Jones. We give our best to his family, and may he rest in peace because he's amazing. Moving on, we want to jump to Star Wars news today. RB3, let's jump to our Star Wars news.
I heard a story about you. I was wondering if it's true.
So our Star Wars news today is all about Rebuild the Galaxy. Last week, we were talking about Star Wars Outlaws. That's done and over with. We're moving on to Rebuild the Galaxy. Laura, I don't know if you follow any of these Lego Star Wars movies, but are you looking forward to Rebuild the Galaxy?
I don't follow them super closely, but I have watched and enjoyed a few of them. Rebuild the Galaxy, I'm looking forward to. I think the preview is really intriguing. My favorite thing, though, about Star Wars, or about the Lego Star Wars stuff, is how it is kind of a what if of Star Wars. I mean, I feel like they really kind of take that concept and they're just like, what if we flew with that and we didn't call it Star Wars What If, but we're going to definitely take hold of that concept and just go wild with it. And I love that they really embrace that. And I think they bring some really fun storytelling to the Star Wars universe. But I remember watching the holiday special and being really excited about that, and watching the summer holiday special and really enjoying that. But I don't think I've probably not seen every single Star Wars Lego special. But where do you stand on these? Do you enjoy these?
Oh, I mean, the two you named are definitely the ones to watch for sure. My favorite is definitely the summer vacation, I think is what it's called, where they all go on vacation and we see kind of the continuation of the sequel trilogy, which I think is kind of fun, which is Rey going on vacation and then Finn kind of training to be a Jedi, or wanting to train to be a Jedi. And I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. I thought it was delightful, a lot of fun, very heartfelt, and very much a celebration of Star Wars and just the vibes of Star Wars in general, and make it a much more uplifting, positive kind of vibe. So the fact that this one looks like it's going to be a lot more hysterical, which I definitely appreciate. I definitely want a little bit more comedy inside my Star Wars. So the fact that you can kind of play around with the Lego canvas as well is really cool. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, it's not It's not Andor season 2. But at the same time, it should definitely be a lot of fun and keep us entertained for a little bit. A little chewing gum before the big meal that comes with Skeleton Crew, because I'm assuming Skeleton Crew is going to be a pretty big deal once it comes out. So this wasn't in my docket, but are you looking forward to Skeleton Crew?
Yeah, I am. I'm a little bit skeptical in terms of like the children being the lead actors. I just feel like this is going to be a lot more geared towards a much younger demographic and probably isn't going to be geared 100% towards me, which is fine. But in terms of like how excited I am, I'm trying to kind of keep expectations low, knowing that I am not the primary audience probably for this show. But that said, I love the like ET vibes, like that really uplifting, like happy Amblin vibe that you get from the trailer. I'm really excited about that possibility of Star Wars kind of embracing that side of things. I think it's going to be a very different feel and look than the Acolyte was, which tended to skew a little bit more on the darker side in terms of storytelling. It looks like it's going to be a little bit happier, sillier, maybe, of a story. So I think something different is probably what Star Wars needs at the time, at this moment in time, and definitely around the holiday season. Going with something a little bit lighter, I think, is going to be the way to go.
Yeah, it's interesting because speaking of Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, it's skewing very young, which it looks like it's skewing very young. I think we can say that. Skeleton Crew looks to be along the same age range. No offense. I don't think it's necessarily as an offense that I'm saying it, but more as a fact of reality, the fact that Skeleton Crew looks to be very, very, very kiddie. That trailer made me feel like this is like for like very young kids, not just like 9-year-olds and 8-year-olds, but maybe even 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds. Sure. So that's going to be definitely not for me. But at the same time, I'm happy that a lot of kids are going to be able to enjoy Star Wars and see themselves in it. Since the last time, which was the Phantom Menace. That's the last time we had like a fun kid in the movie role, at least from what I can remember. But either way, we're going to move on to our green side lot for today.
If you'd only had this little green Psylop.
Our green side lot for today is all about the best performances in Star Wars. I thought this would be a fun topic because next week are the Emmys. We had the Creative Arts Emmys last week, so I wanted to give a shout out to performances in Star Wars, especially since we did have a couple nominees make it through when it comes to a couple shows from our Star Wars shows. I believe that Diego Luna was nominated for Andor. Whether it was this year or the previous year, but I do remember that being part of it. But the fact that Star Wars has always been about this big tent, 4-quadrant, insane, for all audiences kind of movie that has a lot of uplifting themes of hope and love and power and coming together and uniting. But at the same time, it could still have quality performances, Laura. So I wanted us to go back and forth as far as who would we nominate for our top 5 performances. So we're going to do 5 nominees. Well, Laura, I will start with you.
Well, before you jump in, Laura, I do just want to correct the record. Unfortunately, Diego Luna did not receive an Emmy nomination for Best Actor.
Oh, really?
But he did receive a nomination for Best Drama Series since he's a producer on Andor.
Damn, I could have sworn. Could have been something else. My bad.
No, that's awesome. Okay, so let me ask you this as in terms of where I should start, because one of my nominees for an Emmy isn't so much for like a specific role, specific episode or anything. I've got one that's like Lifetime Achievement Award. Would you like me to start with that, or would you like me to end with that?
Oh, yeah, start with it.
Okay, so I wanted to honor Warwick Davis in some way because of his contributions not only to Star Wars but to Lucasfilm as a whole, and filmmaking as a whole. And I think that I love that these award shows, say what you want about them. I know that some people are not, they think that this is just rich people patting themselves on the back, but I think that there is some substance to these award shows. And one of the things that I think they do a really great job at is actually honoring some of these nominees that maybe haven't gotten the like recognition that they should have over the course of their career. And I think Warwick Davis would be an amazing person within the Star Wars family to nominate for some sort of lifetime achievement award, and to just give him a shout out and show some of those clips of all of his work from over the years. So that's my first one. I was looking to do something just a little bit different, and I wanted to pull him into it, and I couldn't think of a good way how. And then it occurred to me that was something that these award shows do a really good job of. So I wanted to throw that shout out to him in that way.
Absolutely. Do you have one official nominee?
My first one I'm going to shout out is probably going to be the most recent one, which is Manny Jacinto. Let's nominate him for Best Lead Actor in The Acolyte. Manny really gave it his all in that show. I know The Acolyte wasn't for everyone. It really, to be totally honest, it wasn't really the show for me. I went into it with really high expectations, and it kind of just didn't live up to what I was hoping that it would be. But man, Manny Jacinto just really put it all out there, and not even just like the action sequences, which he absolutely knocked out of the park. I think his performance as a whole was really impressive and was really something to marvel at. So he's my first one that I'm throwing out as an Emmy nominee.
That's a great one. I agree wholeheartedly. I really do feel like he was a standout in the show. I've tweeted about it like so many times, but the fact that he just really did something different in Star Wars, which I think is really fascinating to see, because we don't really see too many characters like him. And the fact that he just went head first, full into his role and into his performance, and the fact that he really stood out compared to everyone else in the show. And Loki stole the show away from the lead, away from Soul, away from even just the story. I was just fascinated with his character more than anything else. So definitely a great one for sure. This is tough. This is really tough, because I feel like I'm biased towards some characters and performances that I feel like I want to give them to.
We all are.
But at the same time, I'm like, I want to show some love to maybe some people that probably wouldn't get some love. But I'm going to start with one that is kind of, to me, like the OG performance that stole the trilogy, and that kind of went on to do his thing as well in his own show. And that is Obi-Wan Kenobi himself, Ewan McGregor. I want to give Ewan McGregor an Emmy nomination for Obi-Wan Kenobi, absolutely nailing this character, following in the footsteps of Alec Guinness, and doing an incredible job. If I had to name one, I would probably name his own show, Obi-Wan, just because he had the most to do when it comes to a much more focused story on his character himself. But I could honestly name any movie, and I feel like he just absolutely nails the mystery, the suaveness, just everything that Obi-Wan entails is just really fascinating within that character. And I feel like he's a great actor. So I want to give a shout out and a nomination to Ewan McGregor.
Well, and also that, like, he captured so perfectly in the Obi-Wan series that in between moment that Obi-Wan Kenobi is in that time period, where we get that sort of flicker of who Obi-Wan was in Revenge of the Sith, but we also kind of see like who he became in Alec Guinness and A New Hope later on. He strikes that perfect balance between the two portrayals that we've seen in live action of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I thought that was incredibly impressive. So that's a good pick for sure. I approve.
All right, Laura, who is your second nominee?
Okay, so I'm gonna go with a Best Supporting Actor nominee in Stellan Skarsgård in Andor Episode 10. Because if we're gonna do this proper Emmy way, we have to submit a specific episode. So that's what I'm gonna do. Andor Episode 10. I think that there's a chance that this episode actually really should be nominated for like writing, maybe more so than his performance. Like, his monologues were so fantastic, but like the writer behind them, I think, is probably maybe more deserving of that recognition. But the way that Stellan Skarsgård delivered these monologues and had just this incredible performance in Andor, it really sucked me into the show. I think that not maybe not everyone could have delivered those speeches the way that he did in these monologues and make them sound and look as good as he did. But if they were to nominate it for like just writing and not necessarily for him, they're showing that clip. They're showing that clip of his speech where he's talking about, he's not going to get to see the sunrise or whatever of all the work that he's putting into the rebellion. Like, that speech just blew me away. So that's my next nominee. I'm going to go Best Supporting Actor, Stellan Skarsgård.
I mean, absolutely. This would be one of mine. Thankfully, I have a massive list. But absolutely, I feel like Stellan Skarsgård, if we're being real, he probably gave one of the best Star Wars performances ever. Like, no joke, like just on a pure performance level, like award show type stuff. He really like killed it. This character is absolutely insane, so complex, so layered, so psychologically scarred and psychologically just motivated, as far as him just going through like character through character, acting a certain way around different people, the fact that he has to put on a facade, the fact that he's kind of a jerk, an asshole, but also like a leader and a motivator, like all this complexity. He's like just absolutely incredible. I really do feel like Stellan Skarsgård just killed this role in a massive way. And really, again, if we're talking about standout performances, so much love can be given to so many performances in Andor. I really do feel like they have some of the best performances in all of Star Wars, but yet he really does stand out the most because of what that character entails. So yeah, an absolutely incredible choice. Also, go ahead, RB3.
Laura, you're spot on the money. The episode 10 of Andor is nominated for Best Writing in a Drama Series.
Good.
Yeah, for
this year.
This year, yeah.
Wow.
And it's for Bo Wellington. Wellington, who created House of Cards. Yeah.
And he's doing something else. I think he's doing Star Trek, right? I think he's doing Star Trek.
I think he is doing. If he is doing Star Trek, that's amazing. I mean, he's a phenomenal writer.
Is he coming? I wonder if he's coming back for Andor season 2. I feel like maybe he is, or maybe they're bringing in. I can't remember where the writing and directing left off. I feel like they're bringing in a lot of new people, but I can't remember if he was the one that was staying.
I think he is, but I might be wrong. Again, we can check that out some other time. But yeah, I love that episode, and that speech is absolutely crazy, and I love it. But again, as good as the writing is, you need a good performance behind it to nail it. And I think Stellan Skarsgård does that. So shout out to him. My second nominee is someone that I really hope it's not controversial, because I personally feel like he killed it, and he killed it in every single one of his movies. But I'm going to say it. Shout out to my boy Ben Solo. Adam Driver is my next nominee. And again, this is my introduction to who this actor was back in The Force Awakens. And the fact that he has skyrocketed through his own work. I'm not crediting necessarily Star Wars as, the launching pad of his career. I'm crediting him just being damn good. Like, he's just a damn good actor. And the fact that he can go from this to like, almost winning Best Actor in A Marriage Story, which I feel like he could have won Best Actor in A Marriage Story for how good he was in that performance as well. Just the fact that he gives so many layers to Ben, and he gives so many layers to Kylo, and the fact that he's able to take so much rage and anger and just the pure dark sideness of Kylo Ren and be able to slowly pull that out and come up with Ben Solo by the end of The Rise of Skywalker. I think he just absolutely nails that. And I think that scene, and I know people hate it, I know it's controversial, all this stuff, but that scene with him and Harrison Ford, I just think he just killed that and really made me believe, like, all right, this is a new person. This isn't Kylo Ren anymore. This is now Ben Solo. And the fact that he's able to do that by the end of the movie, I think is really incredible, and one of the best performances I've seen in Star Wars. So that is why he's my number 2 nominee.
That's great. I mean, we see that like sort of flicker of vulnerability in him in The Last Jedi, but they really pull that out of him in The Rise of Skywalker. And The Rise of Skywalker is a lot of things, and I know it's a lot of things. It's maybe not everybody's favorite movie, even people who like the sequel trilogy, maybe not necessarily their favorite. But I like everything that they did with Kylo Ren and Ben Solo in The Rise of Skywalker. If I had to pick one character whose story like really worked for me overall, including his death, I actually don't really mind that that's how his story ended. I think that they did a good job with his character, and he really brought something special, something that really makes you want to take a closer look at who this person is and dive a little bit deeper and really want to see that vulnerability in him. And I'm glad that they delivered on that.
Absolutely. All right, Laura, who is your next nominee?
All right, my next one is a nomination for a voice acting performance. I gotta give it to Lars Mikkelsen as Grand Admiral Thrawn in Star Wars
Good
Rebels.
one.
As much as I enjoy him as live action Thrawn in Ahsoka, and as happy and relieved as I am that they put him in that role, I don't think I would have really enjoyed anybody else in that role. I remember being in the room in London when they brought him out on stage and announced him as Thrawn, and just that relief that washed over me, because I'm like, nobody else can do this, okay? But I think that his performance is more award worthy, I think, as the animated character. Bringing that voice to him in Star Wars Rebels was really something else. And I don't think that it's not that I don't think his performance is award worthy in Ahsoka. I don't think that that's his fault. I kind of fault a little bit more like writing and directing in Ahsoka, and not being able to bring that out in that character in live action form. But man, in animated form, that was just something else. Like that sort of quiet whisper that he uses as that character is just so creepy and wonderful and deadly in the best way. It conveys so perfectly who Thrawn is as a character and what he's bringing to that story in that moment. So yeah, I'm gonna throw out, maybe that's a creative arts Emmy. I don't know if what animation, how that comes into play in the Emmys, but that's when I've got to nominate.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I just talked about the power of voice performances. Absolutely, Lars Mikkelsen nails what Thrawn is and who that character represents, and the fact that you said he's so creepy and so like eloquent and like
Yes.
intelligent, and yet he's haunting, like very much like he's not quite a person, he's more like a ghost.
Right?
And it's very, very well done, and I do feel like it helps in making a villain that iconic with this crew that is low-key, like, just because Rebels is like one of my favorite things ever, is low-key like unstoppable. Like you can't stop this crew, and the fact that this foil has to be so much more overpowering than them because of the power of Kanan and Ezra and Sabine all combined together. So I do feel like he absolutely nails that performance, and it absolutely is worthy of being recognized with awards. So yeah, shout out Lars Mikkelsen as Thrawn. I think that's a great choice, and I do understand what you're saying about Ahsoka. I feel like it's very I don't know if he's different in Ahsoka, but I feel like the role is different in Ahsoka, where he's supposed to be much more in the background and much more teasing towards a season 2 or a movie than it is necessarily focusing on him necessarily, because he just comes so later on in the season. So I will move on to my choice for nomination. I don't know if this is controversial. I'm assuming all mine are controversial at this point. I'm going with one of the OGs. And I feel like if we have to pick an OG, I have to pick the one that really defined a generation and that just really transcended everything that Star Wars is. And that's Harrison Ford as Han Solo. I do feel like Harrison Ford as Han Solo, that character type, just became everywhere in Hollywood as far as what he was. And that reluctant hero, that scoundrel, that gangster kind of vibe that he gives off in pretty much all his movies, I just think is absolutely iconic. And I do feel like 90% of that is Harrison Ford. And I do feel like, I love George Lucas, but I feel like Harrison Ford really carried that role and carried that performance. And his chemistry with Chewie, his on-set kind of, almost like improv-ish kind of form of dialogue that he gave off was very much like a Harrison Ford type thing. So I want to give a shout out to him as Han Solo, one of the most iconic characters in all of fiction. So
I'm so glad that you shouted out Harrison Ford, because if you didn't bring him up, I was going to have to bring him up. Like that's a really good choice. I mean, he's just such a cool guy. Like that's what he brings to the character of Han Solo. That's who Han Solo is. Like at the end of the day, whatever, he's a lot of things, but he's just a cool dude. And that's what makes, I think, that character so appealing and so magnetic on screen. And you're right. It's kind of remarkable to think that George Faster, More Intense Lucas could actually get any kind of award-worthy performance out of anyone just because of the style of director that he was. But I think Harrison Ford brought something special to that first Star Wars movie. And I mean, I think that was part of it, was that when that movie first came out, when A New Hope came out, like Mark Hamill, that everybody kind of thought that he was going to be this standout star, this like heartthrob that everybody was thirsting over, and it ended up being Harrison Ford. Like he literally stole the show, just because of, I think, who he is and what he brought to that character inherently. It just worked really well.
It really did, and I think he nailed it. And I do feel like that character and what he is a lot of it has to do with Harrison, if not all of it. So shout out to him. Laura, what is your next nominee? I believe this is number 4 now, right?
Sure. Yeah, I have a 5th one, I think, in my back pocket. I've got my 4th one here is going to be a best guest actor appearance. I'm going to go The Mandalorian season 2, Timothy Olyphant as Cobb Vanth.
Wow. Okay.
Homeboy could be nominated just on swagger alone. So I have to give props where props are due. I think he was great in the Book of Boba Fett, but the way that he just stormed onto the stage and completely took over, and his first appearance in The Mandalorian on Tatooine was just, I think it was just amazing. It was so great. And as somebody who read the Aftermath series, to see that character come to live action, I remember it being rumored. I remember people being like, oh, what if they brought Cobb Vanth? I'm like, why would they do that? This character from a random book? Like, there's no way that they're going to do, like, what an absurd idea. And then they did it, and they did it so well. And they picked the perfect actor to play Cobb Vanth. So that's my number 4 nomination. Best guest actor appearance, Timothy Olyphant.
That's a really good one. I like that. That's interesting. Yeah, the fact that they brought him was definitely hysterical. I remember watching that and being just shocked. But I do feel like he nailed the role and nailed what he was supposed to represent. So I think that's a great one for sure. Yeah, man. Shout out Cobb Vanth. I think that's a good one for sure. All right, we're moving on to mine. I believe I have 2 more. So I'm gonna just do this one now. And again, all the knives pointing at me or guns pointing at me. Controversy again, but I don't think it should be controversial, to be honest, because I really do feel like she gave one of the best performances in Star Wars and just became one of my favorite all-time characters. Daisy Ridley as Rey is my next choice. I think she kills it in every single one of her movies, regardless of what you feel about the movies. I think Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, she gives a really heartfelt, complex performance of balancing her rage, balancing her inner thoughts, her questions about life, about her journey, about her parents, about what her purpose is in this world, in this galaxy. I think Daisy Ridley nails that and nails the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed aspect of herself in The Force Awakens, the confident aspect of herself going at the end of The Force Awakens, and then leading into The Last Jedi, the complexity, her anger, her rage, and then that overlapping into The Rise of Skywalker. I do feel like it's one of the best performances I've seen in Star Wars, and it really just carries the entire trilogy, just absolutely on her back, just carrying the trilogy. So I'm giving it to Daisy Ridley as Rey.
She really did carry a lot of this trilogy. It was of that sequel trilogy. She's fantastic. And who'd have thought, like, you just pluck somebody out of obscurity and throw her into like the world's biggest franchise And she just knocked it out of the park. I mean, I remember being so intrigued by her in The Force Awakens and the way that she balances that in that first movie, that like insecurity and that vulnerability that we see in her, but also like that self-determination. It's this very it's a great balancing act that she's pulling off as Rey, and we only see that sort of confidence grow throughout the sequel trilogy in films 8 and 9. She brought something really special to The Force Awakens, I think, and really carried that out through the rest of the trilogy.
Absolutely. All right, Laura, we're at your last one. What is your last nominee?
All right, my last one. Speaking of controversy, let's throw this out. Let's throw Mandalorian season 3 into the ring, shall we? I gotta shout out Katie Sackhoff in season 3 of The Mandalorian. Katie Sackhoff has.
You're gonna say Jack Black. I was like, no, don't do it, Laura.
Oh, that would have been so funny. No. I'm not going to go there. But no, Katie Sackhoff brought something I think so special to Bo-Katan, not only as the animated character, but the fact that we get to then see her make that jump to live action, I thought was so rewarding as a Star Wars fan. But one of the things that she brings to the screen, the fact that Katie Sackhoff has like one of the most expressive faces. She has a very expressive face, and her performance as Bo-Katan is so restrained. It's really, it's so cool to watch. And she has this like kind of power play that she employs as Bo-Katan, where she speaks kind of so quietly in sort of this like deeper register of her voice that makes it so much more quiet that you really have to lean in to be able to like get everything, or to like really want to get everything. You have to kind of like lean to get it, and it's such a power move, but it's executed so well. So whatever people think The Mandalorian season 3 was, whatever they think of it, I really enjoyed it personally, but I mostly enjoyed it because of what Katie Sackhoff brought to the screen and brought to us as Bo-Katan. I thought was really admirable, and I couldn't look away. At any point when she was on screen, you just can't look away. And it was a really special quality, I think, to bring as an actor. And I think that why there aren't more women on my list is a bigger conversation to have. I just don't think that there are a lot of like really juicy roles for women in these Star Wars series to attract such a high caliber of talent. There's so many juicy roles for men. There's lots to chew on there. There's no shortage of them, in fact, but I think it's a little bit harder to find some of those roles for women in Star Wars. And Katie Sackhoff took what she got and ran with it and made it her own, and just absolutely sucks you into the screen to see what's going to happen next. And I think that was really an intriguing part of The Mandalorian season 3.
It's a very interesting point you bring up. I do feel there's a lot of amazing, women characters in Star Wars. But at the same time, you're right. I do feel like there hasn't been, besides Rey for me, there hasn't been a performance. Maybe you could say Jyn Erso, but I do feel like the one-off movie kind of hurts her a little bit. I personally feel like animated characters like Sabine and Hera are already extremely dense and have a lot to offer, but at the same time, it was hard for them to transfer that into live action, I feel, and to really try to nail what they were trying to bring out of them. So yeah, that's a very interesting conversation to eventually have, for sure. I wish I could say my last one was an incredible, actress performance, but I thought about this. I'm just going to go with it. And I know a lot of people could say that's not true, but I think he knows what movie he's in every single one of his movies. And I think he nails it. I'm going with Papa Palps himself, Ian McDiarmid, as Emperor Palpatine. I think he is creepy and eerie and weird, and just absolutely spooky. And sometimes he's campy, sometimes he's serious, and he's a politician and trying to manipulate you in some way. And he's trying to be charming, and in other ways he's just a very strange man and trying to get this young kid on his side in a very creepy way. And I think he nails it in every single one of those movies. And I think Ian McDiarmid knows what movie he's in. And I think he nails every single one of them. So shout out to Emperor Palpatine himself.
I think he really elevates what the teams that are working on costumes and makeup are doing in the roles that he in these films that he appears in live action. He really just envelops himself into this character, and it's just, oh, it's so good and so creepy. That's a good choice. I think I really like it. You're right. And even when he's like just doing the voice performance in the animated shows, like it just, no one does it like he does, you know? Like, we've gotten a couple different versions in animated and different voices, different voice actors playing him, but Ian McDermott, nobody does it like him. There's something special that he brings to it, and that creep factor, like, it's remarkable to think that this Shakespearean trained, like highly trained, highly educated actor comes in and plays this like ridiculous, creepy, over the top villain, just kind of like, you know, floats in and out of these in what is ultimately kind of a small role in comparison to some of the heroes that get just a lot more screen time. He really takes what he has and he chews on it and spits it out onto the screen, and you can't help but be repelled, but also drawn in to what he's doing. So that's a good pick.
Yeah, I think he nails it. And again, I feel like a lot of it is just like he's having fun with it too. And you could see that. I think a lot of that is in Revenge of the Sith, personally. I think he's having a blast in that movie. Just laughing up a storm against Yoda. He's just like pointing and laughing at Yoda the whole time by the end of that movie. And then even in Rise of Skywalker, I think he's just having a blast. He's just really goofing off with his Sith Eternal, just pointing at the crowd and being like, "Yo, what's up?" He's lifting his hands up. He's like, "Look at my hands, they grow back."
He's like plugged into a USB port the entire time. Exactly. It's great.
Yeah, he's just posing the whole time, like the cameras are flashing. Just the absolutely incredible villain, just the worst of the worst, and that's kind of what you want in a Star Wars villain. So, shout out to him. Any final shout outs you want to give, Laura, and then I'll give our three a chance to give some shout outs.
I would throw an honorable mention to Genevieve O'Reilly as in Andor season 1.
Yeah, I was just gonna get there.
Yeah, I think that's the last one. I feel like you can't not mention it, because she really was like the thing that when we switched from those first 3 episodes of Andor into her story in episode 4, and all of a sudden like the colors were brighter and we were in a totally different environment, and it's almost kind of like a little bit similar to like what Katie Sackhoff's doing as Bo-Katan, in that it's a very like restrained performance. It's a lot of control that she has to take, I think, over her performance and over this character to keep it as sort of restrained as it is. And I think it's really fun to watch. And she's such an interesting character with a lot of backstory, and the fact that we're getting all of these new stories with this character we thought we knew so well has been really fun.
Yeah, I want to give you a chance as well, RB3, to name 1 or 2 that you really want to shout out.
Damn, I only get 1 or 2 . Come on now. I'm gonna say 5.
As many as you want. Yeah.
5.
My bad, man.
Just like you said, Lord, I was just gonna say literally right before you said it. Genevieve Riley, Mon Mothma, just a remarkable performance. Probably the most human performance. Also in Andor, Andy Serkis as the prison homie. He just wrecked me. That last line when he says, "I can't swim," and it's just that broken look in his eyes is just like, but it's just tough. Of course, Diego Luna is there too, and like you said, Andres, Daisy Ridley, and all of them. You know, despite the up and downs, she's definitely the one of the best parts of that whole series through and through. And of course, I gotta show love to Giancarlo Esposito and Mandalorian, probably one of the best villains. But it actually, you know, I say that, but then there's no good villains in Star Wars without the foundation that James Earl Jones led to Darth Vader. So I'll probably actually just go James Earl Jones for Darth Vader in that sense. But Giancarlo Esposito, honorable mention for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean James Earl Jones and John Collar, but the fact that James Earl Jones was supposed to gave so much in his performance, and the fact that he was supposed to variate so much of who Vader was, going from A New Hope to Empire to eventually Return of the Jedi. There's a really great moment that someone posted on Twitter as far as the clip right when he takes Luke into custody, in Endor, I believe. That scene is really, really well acted by James Earl Jones, and I do think he nails that, and nails the kind of the cracks in Vader's mask and in his voice, to really give that off. So I think that's a great choice for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I do feel like there's a lot of great performances in Star Wars, and that a lot of them deserve credit. A recent one that I feel really did stand out, and I know he's gone too soon, and is someone else that we have lost inside this universe, and that is Ray Stevenson. I do feel like what he gave in Ahsoka low-key stole the show when it comes to his performance as Baylan Skoll, I believe is what it was. I feel like that was his name. And the fact that he's able to give so much in that character and make him so mysterious was really, really cool. And again, gone too soon. And it's such a bummer that he couldn't continue on in this role, because it was such a great role. So yeah, a lot of great performances in Star Wars. Let's move on to Full Sabacc for today.
Full Sabacc.
Our Full Sabacc for today is all about the Book of Boba Fett. Laura, I asked you beforehand, what is a special character or show or movie that you wanted to put a spotlight on, and you told me the Book of Boba Fett Chapter 2. This is the Tusken Raiders episode. The first things first, Laura, is what is it about this show and this episode specifically that stands out so much to you?
Well, so when we first talked about this, I was trying to think of like what would be a good underrated show, episode, movie, something to go with. And it's hard to come up with something like that in Star Wars, because Star Wars is what it is. It's just huge. So I think with this episode in particular, it's not so much underrated in that, but I think we just moved on from it too quickly. And I think viewers' ultimate feelings on the Book of Boba Fett as a whole kind of overshadow how good this episode was and how much it really stood out. And I think that, sort of with this episode in particular, but really with the Book of Boba Fett as a whole, the show gave us some really essential Boba Fett backstory, and also told this very beautiful story about a misunderstood indigenous people on Tatooine. And I get why some people didn't necessarily connect with Boba Fett, with the Boba Fett show as a whole, but man, I will go down defending this episode with my whole chest. This episode in particular of the show really stood out for me. I mean, we learned so much about the Tusken Raiders and their ancestral claim to the Dune Sea on Tatooine. And, for the first time, we get to see a Star Wars story from the perspective of an indigenous people. And I just thought it was a really beautiful, well-told story, start to finish.
Yeah, how do you feel about the fact that it was kind of a retrospective look on the Tusken Raiders and a reframing as far as how we view them, and how the episode handled the kind of new viewpoint as far as how we look at Tusken Raiders from now on?
Yeah, I mean, The Mandalorian, it kind of laid some of that foundation for us and introduced us to the concept of oh, maybe we don't necessarily understand what the Tusken Raiders are and where they come from and their backstory. I mean, and the fact that they kind of laid that foundation is great, but I don't think they did enough to build on that. And I love that this episode took this time to do this flashback, which at the time, I think when this aired, Star Wars wasn't known for doing a lot of flashback episodes. I think the Book of Boba Fett really decided to screw that idea. We got to do this. We got to dive into this a little bit deeper. And I'm so glad that they did. I mean, the Tuskens kind of representing the Maori tribes struggle for independence in New Zealand and in the surrounding area, and Tamora Morrison kind of getting to bring his culture into this show, I can only imagine was so rewarding. And I really wish that they would have taken some of this this fertile ground that this story laid and built on it. Unfortunately, the rest of the Book of Boba Fett didn't really take advantage, I think, of what we got in this story and build on it in the way that I would have hoped that they would have. Maybe we'll get that someday in a book or something, but I think that, taking a lot of these classic tropes that we get in Star Wars, like, especially when you think of Westerns and the train robbery, and you rework it into a story about the Tuscans reclaiming this land that they've inhabited for hundreds of years, I thought it was so well done. And I'm really glad that Star Wars started embracing the idea of doing flashbacks and diving a little bit more into those stories to sort of tell us a more complete story.
Yeah, I feel like the casting of Tamar Morrison is one of the most underrated castings of all time, and the fact that George chose Tamara because of his Maori warrior kind of mentality and this kind of presence that he held himself with for a Jango Fett. And the fact that's why he chose him. He wanted Jango to be almost like this unstoppable warrior that can keep up with a Jedi Knight like Obi-Wan, who was already considered to be one of the most powerful during that time period. Really does a lot and really carries a lot of weight to it. I mean, obviously, as we were talking about performances previously, the fact that Tamara is able to take his culture with him and really deliver it into the Book of Boba Fett was, I think, the best part of the show in general. So I do feel like this episode was definitely the standout of the season. How do you feel about the way people perceive the Book of Boba Fett now, the perception of the show and the way people look at it? Do you feel like it's held in good regard, or do you feel like it's kind of brushed aside nowadays?
I definitely think it's brushed aside for the most part. And part of that is we've gotten so much Star Wars content since then. So part of me kind of gets it. And it's also a matter of like, a lot of these Star Wars shows are for someone. They may not be for you, but they are for someone. And I think that the Book of Boba Fett connected with some viewers. Unfortunately, it was maybe a smaller percentage than some of these other Star Wars shows have, unfortunately. And the fact that Star Wars has not really made any attempt to acknowledge or follow up what the storytelling that they gave us in the Book of Boba Fett. I mean, The Mandalorian didn't pick up any of these story threads, with the exception of course, the 3 Mandalorian episodes that we got in the Book of Boba Fett, and then picking up the story from there. It's just kind of unfortunate that they haven't brought Tamara Morrison and they haven't brought Ming-Na Wen as Fennec Shand back into the fray yet, with the exception of the Bad Batch, another set in a totally different time. It would be nice to revisit these characters in this story and maybe dive a little. I kept thinking that like the Tusken Raiders were going to come back into the Book of Boba Fett and we were going to explore a little bit more. They were going to make they were going to come in and like save the day at some point, but they were like, no, Din Djarin, which at the time I didn't have a massive problem with, because I really enjoy The Mandalorian and I love seeing Din Djarin and Grogu show up anywhere and everywhere. But at the same time, there was room to tell more of this story, and for whatever reason they chose not to. And for the people like me who are this show was for me, I really enjoyed it and I would like to learn more. I hope that they do explore more at some point, whether that's a Book of Boba Fett season 2, or maybe they just let's throw them a bone and throw a Book of Boba Fett episode into The Mandalorian. Like let's even this out a little bit. Yeah,
I mean, I guess if we're doing this in The Mandalorian and Grogu, if he makes an appearance in there, I think that'd be kind of cool, right? I mean, the fact that Tamara Morrison can be back in a Star Wars movie in some capacity would be a really cool opportunity. And I could see a world where you can bring back the Tuskens in a movie as well. And I think that'd be a great way to kind of close the chapter on that, at least in some sort of satisfying way. Because I know that's kind of what they're trying to do with The Mandalorian and Grogu, the movie itself. So hopefully we can get that. Do you feel like in retrospect now, the inclusion of Din kind of did undercut the story of Boba in a way, or do you feel like it still fits?
I can kind of see it both ways. I think it fit fine. I'm not sure if it was necessarily like a perfect fit, but it fit fine. I think it would have fit better to actually bring the Tusken Raiders back, because they did kind of leave the story open-ended, especially at the end of this episode 2, the tribe of the Tuscans in particular. They left room for more. So I would have liked to see more. I mean, like, even just some of those scenes, we get that really beautiful and bizarre imagery of what Boba Fett sees when he's kind of tripping during the like ceremony after the train heist, which sort of leads him to like the tree where he takes the branch to be forged in the fire and transformed into his Gaddafi stick. And it's kind of symbolizing, you know, his own transformation from the Boba Fett that emerged from the sand into like what he would become. There's just a lot more, I think, fertile ground there for more storytelling. And on my podcast on Forced Hosts, my co-host Alice mentioned just recently, because Boba Fett comes up a lot because we both enjoyed the show quite a bit. She had mentioned something, you know, saying like, you can say what you want about this show, but this was the first time that she actually cared about Boba Fett. And I'm in the same boat. Like, it wasn't a character that I really connected with at any point. Certainly not in the original trilogy, kind of really not in the prequels either. And the fact that it made me connect with that character in such a new and enjoyable way, and it brought in this reframing of the Tusken Raiders and made us really kind of examine that a little bit more closely, I thought was really not only fun storytelling, but the fact that it kind of really made you think was really important and really useful. I think maybe something that there isn't quite enough of in Star Wars, where we need to maybe start questioning some of these things that were featured in the original trilogy, where I'm like, maybe we can dive into this. And I guess the prequel trilogy too, we saw slaughtering of the Tuskens in the prequel trilogy, and I'm like, let's pick some of these things apart a little bit and see what story comes out of it, because this one for sure was just gorgeous and great. And Steph Green directed this episode, Jon Favreau wrote it. I can't wait to see where Steph Green goes from here, and hopefully there's more Star Wars in her future.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I feel like the score also stood out quite a bit. That last song that they were playing at the end was really special. Talk to me about that really quick.
Yeah, Joseph Shirley did the score for this series, and then we got to see more of his work in The Mandalorian season 3. But the like tribal music that they brought into the Book of Boba Fett was so cool. And I think it was the season finale of the show where they like added some kind of extra, I don't know if it was like extra percussion or something that they added to the opening theme song that just like, I remember everyone being like, wait a minute, was that there this whole time? Like, why am I like really feeling this? I'm like, no, it wasn't there the whole time. They're adding it now, and it's awesome. But you see a lot of that playing out, that kind of tribal and the percussion that really plays out really well in this episode in particular.
Thank you for reminding me. I can't believe I forgot that. Joseph Shirley, absolutely. He killed that. And that, you're absolutely right. That last song is beautiful. And then the one they were putting at the end was also really well done. He did the score for Creed 3, which I thought was absolutely amazing. And I listened to constantly when that movie came out, because I thought it was really, really cool. Yeah, thank you, Laura, for sharing all this. I do feel like it's definitely necessary to hear from it. Arbiter, do you have any thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett or anything Laura was touching on?
To be honest, I have not seen the Book of Boba Fett, so
no way.
Yeah, that's the one I kind of skipped out on. But I did amply turn away when I felt like spoilers were coming upon us. But no, it's
my bad, man.
No, you're good. No, I like the fact that he was taking baths in it. That was very interesting.
Yeah. He was doing these the healing baths, man. You gotta get in there and make sure you're healed up.
Yeah, I always love bath time.
But yeah,
you know, a little scrub rub in the tub. You know.
That's how this little flashback starts. Is when he's in the he's in the whatever it is now. I'm like completely blanking on the name. My trivia brain is gone. That's it. The back to tank spends a lot of time in the Book of Boba Fett in there, and that's what prompts this flashback sequence.
It's very anime. It's super anime. Speaking of Joseph Shirley, Creed 3 is also very anime. But the whole, like, I'm in this healing chamber, I'm Goku, you know, prepping for my next battle against the Namekians, or against Frieza or whatever. And then it cuts away. And
hello, can you hear me?
Before we were you saying something?
Oh, no, you got froze for a second. I don't know. My bad.
Oh, did I freeze? I'm sorry, guys. let's move on to Squad Up with Squad Leader Ace and close out the show for today. So for this episode of Squad Up for Squad Leader Ace with Squad Leader Ace, you, Laura Kelly, are a thief trying to steal coaxium from one of the major crime syndicates. In order to accomplish your mission, you need a team. First thing you need on your team is a trusty droid. This droid will help you break into doors that you cannot open. Number 2, you need a Force user. In case anything goes down, a Force user will be clutch. Number 3, you need another crime syndicate on your side. So since you're stealing from a rival crime syndicate, you need the trust of at least one other. Who will that be? Number 4, you need a rebel leader. You need a great mind to help you organize your mission, so pick a legendary rebel leader. Number 5, you need a speeder. This will get you in and out as quickly as possible. And finally, a team name. This will let the other crime syndicates know that you mean business and that you are just as scary as they are. Laura Kelly, who are you picking as your trusty droid on this thievery?
Ooh, okay. I think that Lola from the Obi-Wan series would come in handy. She's small, she's compact, she can fly. I mean, I feel like that's got to be a win in some situation. Also, she's just so cute and so loyal. So I want that.
I have the Lola toy.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's somewhere around here. I would go get it, but I have her and she's great. I love Lola. I think she's an underrated droid. Absolutely underrated.
Agreed.
So I'm picking someone who I also feel is very durable and who can take a lot. And that's BB-8. BB-8 is my boy.
Perfect.
He may not be as mobile as others, but you know what? He's got them Spider-Man wires that we saw him use in The Last Jedi. We saw him use in The Force Awakens. So if anything goes down, BB-8 can just swing around like Spider-Man and get the job done. Plus, I feel like he will have my back no matter what. And he will blend in case anything goes down. So I'm picking BB-8. Who are you picking as your Force user to join you on this mission?
You know, I think I'm going to go back in time a little bit to the High Republic. And I'm going to pull Avar Kriss in because she's like my favorite character in the High Republic. And I kind of just want to hang out with her, even if that means we're going on a heist or whatever. That's part of it. But I think that she brings, I mean, powerful Force energy for one, but also charm. You need to have like somebody real charming in this situation if we're going to like go in and steal some shit. Like, and I feel like she's one of those that she's going to bring that sort of badassery, but also calm and 100% charm.
It's a great one. That's a good one for sure. Yeah, I feel like there's so many to choose from. I could pick someone super powerful like a Mace Windu, and just he could pretty much do the whole mission on his own. I could pick someone insane like Anakin. But I'm kind of going along your vibes. I want to pick someone who is kind of used to this and can also charm his way into situations. I'm going with Kanan Jarrus. Kanan Jarrus is used to these types of missions. This is what he does. So I feel like if I'm bringing any Jedi along, it is the Rebel Jedi himself, Kanan Jarrus. Who or what is your speeder that you're going to be using?
Oh, see, I'm bad at this with vehicles, so this I might need to take like a mulligan on this one and go with maybe one of your suggestions on this, because beyond like a land speeder or like whatever the speeder bikes are in Return of the Jedi, I'm like, shit, I don't know.
That works. You can name one of those. You could just say land speeder or the.
Let's go with one of the. Yeah, let's go to the speeder bikes because those are actually in the Book of Boba Fett episode too. Yeah. So they are heavily featured in that and seem to be well put to use. So I'll go with one of those.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I believe it is the 74Z speeder bike. I feel like is what it was. Yeah, those are clutch and they're super fast, and I feel like they would be absolutely perfect. I feel like that also fits into like the solo coaxium, like the Cloud Riders were riding those kind of speeders that look like Harleys. I think those would be kind of cool as well. I forget the names of those. But if I had to pick a speeder, I'm going with the speeder that Han Solo tries to charm Kira in when he's on Corellia, the convertible speeder that he has. I forget the name of it, 10-4 or 410A, something like that. But I feel like that speeder would be cool. And it's like a convertible, like old school Corvette kind of speeder. So shout out to Han for recommending that speeder to me. He's on Carfax. Show me the speeder facts. Show me the Carfax. Finally, your rebel leader.
All right, maybe this one's controversial, but I am going to go with Saw Gerrera. I want a little bit of, I want some chaos up in my heist. If we're going to steal some shit, I just want it. Let's just see what he does, because he's going to bring some interesting energy to the group, and I kind of wanted to see how that plays out.
Damn, Saw is a good one, because Saw's smart and he's done this a million times probably. So again, he's used to it. This is what he does. And again, you're right, chaotic. He will not care if there's casualties. Can I do a Drax the Destroyer and say, I'll do you one better? Luthen Rail.
Nice.
I'm picking Luthen Rail as my rebel leader. He's gonna do what Saw does too. He's gonna wreck shop, be incredibly efficient, incredibly careful, but also does not mind if a couple bodies are laid to waste in my mission. So shout out to us picking the two rebel leaders to go at it. So I think those are good choices.
Y'all some
finally,
man. Y'all some
I know, for real.
Mofos.
Yeah, we are badasses. Finally, we need a badass team name. Laura, what is your team name?
Okay, mine's like really dumb, but I wanted to like go with something like Crimson Dawn, and so I kind of started to model it off of that. And so but I also want to convey speed and agility and like competence. So my name is the Golden Fathiers, which sounds more like the name of like a kid's t-ball team or something in Star Wars, but whatever, man. It's the name of my crime syndicate.
Yeah, that's exactly the vibes I was going for. Something like that sounds amazing. Damn, I don't know if I could top that. Yeah, I feel like you need something that is just terrifying in some way, and something that also features a color. You got Black Sun, you got your Golden Fathiers, you got Crimson Dawn. I'm going with shout out to my girl Ray. I'm going with the Yellow Sabers. We here, bro. We got yellow lightsabers. The Yellow Sabers are here to steal your coaxium. And we're going to be badass. And we have Kanan Jarrus on our team. And yeah, we're killing it. We have Luthen Rail leading us, so no one can stop us. Yeah, these are good. Laura, let's run it back before you take off for today. Who is your droid on your mission?
I've got Lola.
Your Force user?
And my Force user is Avar Chris.
Your rebel leader?
That was Saw Gerrera.
Your speeder?
That would be, that was the Return of the Jedi speeder bikes.
And then your team name?
The Golden Fathiers.
Finally, my droid is BB-8. My Force user is Kanan. My rebel leader is Luthen. My speeder is the Han Solo speeder in Solo a Star Wars Story. My team name is the Yellow Sabers. Shout out to my team. Laura Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, come find me on Twitter. I am often talking and tweeting about Star Wars on Twitter. My handle is shutup_Laura. You can also find me at that same handle on Instagram, though I'm just not nearly as active as I am on Twitter. So find me there for sure. You can find my podcast Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour on all major podcast platforms. We are at Force Toast Pod on Twitter, and I host a show with John Roca and Kevin Smets on John Roca's YouTube channel called The Jedi Way, where we just talk about Star Wars every 2 weeks. Usually it's about something in the news. We'll do reviews if there's ever a show airing, but sometimes it's just kind of a random topic that we pull from something lightly based on what's in the news. So check that out on John Roca's YouTube channel. That's The Jedi Way.
Awesome. Make sure you guys follow Laura on all that. RB3, where can everyone find you, man?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DirectorRB3.
And you can follow me at Squad Leader Ace. Make sure you guys follow First Cut at First Cut TMO, and make sure you subscribe to First Cut if you haven't done so already. Either way, guys, for the Sabacc the Block crew, we're going to be peacing out. So peace, deuces.
So this is
Full Sabacc.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. We appreciate